Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the District 3 Community Meeting. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join us in person and on live stream. Can everyone hear me? Oh, okay, you're just giving hugs. That's good, that's good. Turn to your neighbor and say hi. How about that? Well, we appreciate everyone that came out. We have a great program to provide information on what's going on in your city and how we can serve you in your community and your city. Before we jump into it, we do have additional department heads here or their reps. We have the Pasadena Police Department. We have the Pasadena Outreach Response Team, which some know as PORT. We do have the Rent Stabilization Department, and we have the Housing Department here. And then we also have our community partner, the Armory Center for the Arts is here too. So if you have any questions after the meeting, please, find them, ask them any questions. You can always ask me any questions, send me an email or send me a text, and we'll be happy to provide any type of service that you need. And so I'd like to welcome to provide brief remarks Letty Lopez and Tisha Washington, who is the superintendent of the JRCC. We can clap her up, come on.
Good evening, my name is Leticia Lopez. I'm the Recreation Community Services Superintendent, and we welcome each and every one of you here at Jackie Robinson Community Center. We have our program coordinator, Tisha, right there. And we just wanted to thank Councilman Justin Jones for all your support here at the center as well as in the community. Just wanted to let you know we offer a variety of community services here, community classes, workshops, grab-and-go meals, and I just wanted to share our upcoming special events. We have a senior talent show on Wednesday, May 15, API Chinese tea brewing and tasting on Friday, May 24th from 1 to 3, and our biggest event, our Jackie Robinson Community Center's 50th building dedication of this facility, and that will be held Saturday, June 15th. We'd love to offer additional classes and programs, so if you are interested in teaching, such as our computer classes or anything like that, feel free to talk to us. Our door is open, and we welcome you and everyone here this evening, so thank you.
Thank you. So up next, I want to introduce our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Brenda Harvey Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Wow, this is a great turnout. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for, again, coming out tonight. Community engagement is so important, and you show that that's important to you just by your presence here. It really means a lot, I think, that you came to spend the evening, your Tuesday evening with Councilmember Jones. I'd like to think that you came because you knew I was coming, but you didn't know I was coming, so. He actually invited the city manager to be here, and he is at another meeting, so you get me. But I did want to give you a couple of highlights of things that are going on in town. The council member's office asked that we share with you the status of the recruitment for our general manager of water and power. You may or may not know that our water and power general manager left a few months ago. And that's a crucial position because this is the position that provides all of our electricity and water, things that we need very much. And so in terms of that recruitment, we have been recruiting for the position. The application period closed on Sunday. We're working with a recruiter. They've been undergoing a nationwide search. And the long and short is the recruiter is screening the candidates right now, and if all goes well, we will have interviews towards the end of May, beginning of June, and depending on where the person is coming from, hopefully have a new person on board by July, August at the latest. But don't worry, our utility has been in good hands. One of our other assistant city managers, David Reyes, has been filling in the job and serving as the acting general manager. And that's why even though the director left, the water continues to flow, the lights still come on, so all is good. A couple of other things I wanted to share with you. Before becoming an assistant city manager, one of the jobs I held was a finance administrator for over 20 years for the city. And one of my main job duties was preparing the budget, the city's capital improvement budget, as well as the operating budget for the Public Works Department. And this is the time of year, so this is budget time. So I always used to get very excited. You know, not everybody likes numbers the way I do, but I would always get very excited that it's budget time! Yes, this is the time of the year where all the decisions are made on how we're gonna spend our money during the next fiscal year. So if you have an interest in learning more about that, we have two different budgets that the city prepares. One is our operating budget, which we call that our operating and maintenance budget that pays our day-to-day activities. And the other is our capital budget, which goes for the major improvements that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, things like building new streets, or building a new building, or making major improvements in buildings. So the capital budget is actually going to be going to the City Council this coming Monday evening for approval, and we're hopeful that the council will approve it. This past Monday, they had a 3.5-hour budget workshop, and your council member was there the whole time, grilling and asking a lot of questions, and now that is going to the council on Monday for approval. And then right after that, we'll start a series of hearings, actually next week, on the operating budget. So every single city department will go to a different city council meeting and present their budget, council committee meeting, and present their budget. And then by the end of May, beginning of June, that will all be going to the city council for approval as well. And all of these meetings are televised on our very able KPAS, or Pasadena media. Then you might have heard something about some rate increases. Did anybody hear about some proposed rate increases for sewer or refuse or water? Oh, well, then I'm not going to tell you. But there are some rate increases proposed, and this coming Monday, the council will be considering a rate on your sewer charge. And you may or may not know, on your water and power bill, you get charged for water, power, sewer, and very good, this is a smart crowd, trash. And the bill comes out every other month. So it can be a big bill. And there are some rate increases proposed because, just like everything else, the cost of providing those services are going up. And so your city council is in the process of debating those, but on Monday night, the council will be taking up the sewer increase, and then the next week, they'll be looking at the refuse increase, and then in early June, the water increase. But there's also a number of other things going on. I did want to mention on Saturday over at Villa Park, there's a Spring into Wellness Community Health Festival. If anyone would like to attend that, it's free, and it's from 11 to 1:30, and it's sponsored by our Public Health Department, and they'll have a number of community partners there. Also, if any of you are young at heart or have young people in your house over the age of 14 who are looking for summer jobs, the city is hiring right now for summer positions. I see some looks on faces. Yes, cityofpasadena.net. If you have a young person over the age of 14, we are hiring for summer camp positions. We need camp counselors, or their title is recreation leaders, and we need a lot of them. So please feel free to share that information with young people. And when you get 14, you can be camp counselors. And if you're 12 and under, you can go to camp. Oh, I see another possible camper right there as well. So we are hiring. We have a lot of positions that are open, but I do like to highlight at this time of year that there is employment for teenagers available. We also have a program called the ROSE program for 14 to 24-year-olds, and we really just want to hire people. And then I do want to leave you with one last position that we're currently recruiting for. It's a brand new position called Sustainability Coordinator. So the city has a lot of environmental programs, sustainable programs, And they're scattered throughout different departments, and we don't really do as good a job as we could of promoting them and letting our community know all that we're doing. So we are hiring a position who will not bring them all into one location, but help coordinate them and get the word out about everything environmental and sustainability that the city of Pasadena is working on. And so you'll be hearing more about that when we do get that position filled. So I know I wasn't asked to speak very long, just to give a welcome, but I did also want to just take the opportunity to share a few things that are going on with you. So welcome, and I know this is going to be a great meeting because it's going to be a great meeting because all of you are here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda. And just a fun fact, I was a Rose Program intern, and Brenda Harvey Williams was my supervisor. So the tables have turned. I'm not that old. So up next, we'll bring up Wendy Macias with the City Manager's Department. She is the project manager, the senior project manager for the Reconnecting Community 710 project. And we know how important this project is to our city and our community. Just a few years ago, Pasadena was able to reclaim some of the 710 property. And we do have the task force chair, who is a District 3 appointee and a lifelong resident of Pasadena, Mr. Danny Parker, is here too. So thank you for being here, Danny. So Wendy, if you can come up and provide us an update. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Thank you for inviting me to be here with you at the District 3 community meeting. And so, following up Councilmember Jones's comments, many of you may have heard that the 710 master planning project is underway, so I am going to be giving you a quick update. And so I did want to start with first introducing the 710 project area. I think for those that may not be familiar, as you can see in the two pictures, the 710 project area that we're focusing on is located between Pasadena Avenue on the east side and St. John Avenue on the west. At the northern boundary, you'll have Union, and further south along California is the southern border. And so the master planning project and the work that we're doing is or will be contained within this area. And so our project will not touch any of the existing Caltrans homes. Most of them, I believe, are located south of California. And so if you are interested in receiving information about that, unfortunately, this project does not include any of the Caltrans homes. And so just a brief background, as mentioned by Councilmember Jones, the city in August of 2022 received the relinquishment of the 710 stub from Caltrans. And so what that transfer of land did for the city was really start thinking about what they were going to do with this 710 stub. And as you can see from the various aerials here in the presentation, there was a significant amount of displacement that occurred as part of the construction. In a span of approximately 10 years, you see that the fabric of the Pasadena community changed significantly. And so one of the questions that really started to come up is like, how will we reintegrate this into the surrounding community? And so because the 710 stub currently does not have any zoning or land use designations, it's important to go through the master plan process, which is what we're doing now. The master planning process will create a guiding planning document for future development of the area. And it really is the first step to creating a 710 Northern Stub specific plan. And so, similar to other plans that are approved in the city, the 710 master plan needs to meet all of our city council goals and requirements, as well as the general plan goals and policies. And so really, not only is the master plan an exercise on how to redevelop the land, but it's also an opportunity to acknowledge the history of the 710 stub and the displaced communities. And so the master plan and the work that we'll be doing will work to acknowledge the history of the displaced communities. It will aim to equitably distribute those benefits and mitigate the impacts to vulnerable populations within the city. And so in February of 2023, the Pasadena City Council created the Reconnecting Community 710 Advisory Group. And this is a group of appointed residents that have been put together to collaborate with city staff and city consultants. And this group particularly meets every third Wednesday of the month at 6:30. Their meetings are held in the City Council chamber, so we do invite everyone to come in and participate. You can come in and leave your public comments. And it really is an opportunity to listen in on the various discussions that we're starting to have with our different consultants and different topics that are coming up as we're starting to plan for the master plan. And so one of the first things that the 710 Advisory Group made clear to city staff was that they really wanted the master plan to include an acknowledgement of the history of Pasadena. They really wanted it to not only recognize the displacement that happened, but parts of the vibrant community that were displaced as part of this infrastructure project. And so with their feedback, this helped to create a request for proposal for a historic project, which is also part of the master plan, but it's its own section in itself. And this is really a form of acknowledging the different parts of the history in Pasadena that the advisory group felt were really important. And so as part of the historic project, the master plan includes these three parts to the historic project. The first is a historical data setting, and that part will look at and document historical data that existed prior to the construction of the stub. And so that includes homes, schools, businesses, and institutions. The second consultant will focus on the impacts of freeways on segregation in Pasadena, what this large infrastructure project really did and how it kind of segregated various groups within the community. And so that consultant will focus solely on those impacts. Lastly, is the oral history portion of the historic project. And the work that this consultant is doing is really focusing on identifying people in our community currently that either lived in the 710 stub, their family lived in the 710 stub, or were displaced from the stub. Anyone that may have knowledge or their own experience that they want to share with these consultants, this is considered the oral history project. And so they're currently out in the community already, and the idea is that we want to memorialize your experience. There'll be a series of interviews, preliminary interviews, and then ultimately, depending on the group that they recognize or the group that they're able to locate, they will also record several of those interviews and compile it as a final project. And so focusing again on that oral history component and the consultant, they're actually out in the community. There have been a couple of social media posts. There has been a press release that talks about their work. And so again, as previously mentioned, their focus is to identify those members of the community and to really try and get that full experience to complement the work of the other two historic consultants. And so that's the historic portion. The overall and larger master plan process, their scope includes 7 deliverables, which is what I'll cover here. The work that they will be delivering for us includes a community engagement strategy, which will be inclusive of all of the communities within the city of Pasadena. They are going to be setting up workshops and different types of events to come out into the community and really get feedback on the entire process. There's also a restorative justice framework and policy scope that's part of the master plan work. And that's going to be, again, bolstered by the work of the historic project consultants. So a lot of the work that's getting compiled as part of the previous group, the 3 consultants, that will also inform a lot of the restorative framework that's going to get put together for the larger overarching master plan. There is a data collection portion of this which will complete the scope. It will include, it will survey the existing 710 area. It will take surveys of the existing conditions, and then it will provide a 3D modeling of some of the proposed solutions once we go through the various processes of determining what it is that we might decide for the stub. The master plan project itself will also include an economic study and market demand analysis. And this will help to identify market-supported land use options that can help to realize the city's economic development goals. The mobility and circulation analysis portion of the master plan will include defining and identifying mobility and circulation options. One thing that I do want to point out about the 710 project is that it does have to maintain a sort of transportation component to it. And so part of the work will include working closely with Caltrans to make sure that we meet all of their requirements in terms of changes to any of the on-ramps or off-ramps. So it's going to be a collaborative effort to make sure that transportation, mobility surrounding the stub is not disrupted. Lastly is the land use options, or second to last, it's the land use options. And again, this will give everyone an opportunity to put forth their opinions in terms of what should be created in the 710 stub. What kind of buildings, what kind of institutions, should we have public and open spaces? And so the land use options is going to really narrow that down through the process. And again, the idea is to create a balanced land use type of form where we integrate mobility and buildings and public areas, and the land use option will really put that together for us as part of this process. Lastly is a climate resilient infrastructure plan. And again, this will provide input and direction on climate resiliency and the commitments that the city will make in terms of providing or creating that climate resiliency. And they'll take this opportunity to prioritize that and make sure that, as mentioned by Brenda previously, that it coincides with the different efforts that are going on already within the community. Community engagement. I briefly mentioned it, I think, in one of the prior slides. Again, this master plan process will include a pretty robust community engagement process. We are getting very close to coming out into the community. We have a tentative date scheduled for mid to late June with no concrete date. As soon as we have that nailed down, we will make sure that we provide that information to Lisa and the District 3 offices, just to make sure that everyone is informed and engaged. But community engagement is really important as we move through the master plan process. We want to make sure that everyone's voices are heard, that the work that gets created is reflected from all levels of our community, from the youth, from our current residents. And so we will make sure that you are very well aware of all of the community engagement efforts that move forward as part of the plan. And so we are getting close to the end of my presentation. I do want to take the time to encourage you to come out and participate. If you have questions, if you are just interested in more of the history or the different work that different consultants are doing as part of our project, we encourage you to stay involved. I will leave you here with the information, again, that has the time and the place for our Reconnecting Community 710 Advisory Group meeting. We also have a page where you can find all of our agendas. You can even log on to our Reconnecting Advisory Group meetings if you can't make it in person. And I've also included my email address and my phone number if you want to reach out to me and if you have questions or you just want to stay in touch so that you know what community engagement events are coming. And so that concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Can you go to the mic, please?
I was a little kid, but I was one of those people that was displaced. And not only were we displaced from our house, my favorite school was Lincoln School, just not the post office. And also my church, First Family Church, was destroyed. So I would really like to be a part of the narrative as we go forth.
I will make sure to connect with you. I'd love to take your information and we'll make sure that we forward that to our consultant for the oral history.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd recommend you connect with Danny Parker too, who's the chair of the advisory committee.
Thank you so much.
Okay, up next, we will have a presentation about the public art, or the Robinson Park Recreation Center Public Art Project by Mr. Corey Dunlap, Public Art Coordinator for Cultural Affairs.
Thank you, Councilmember. We appreciate the opportunity to present this evening. Thank you for coming out and spending your Tuesday evening with us. As mentioned, I am the city's public art coordinator in the Cultural Affairs Division. Excited to share just a bit about the progress of the Robinson Park Recreation Center Public Art Project and share where we have gone to date and some of the work that the artists are developing thus far. Just a bit of a background about the project. From the Cultural Affairs Division side, the project is led by the city's public art guidelines under the Capital Improvement Program. So this sought that with the renovation of the Recreation Center, which was completed in 2019, there was an opportunity and a generation of funding for a on-site public art project. The current project is designed to include 2 permanent public artworks sited at the Recreation Center. The initial budget for the project was allocated at only $10,000, but through enhancement from council and stakeholders, that's been increased to include $200,000 per project. That's split between 2 phases. The first phase, which we're currently in, is development, in which the artists work extensively with the community, and then they develop their public art proposal. The second phase of implementation is primarily development and fabrication of the artwork, as well as installation and celebration as well. So that's to come later on. So the project and the basis of the development really came from the Robinson Park Stakeholder Group, who developed the goals and vision statement for the project. The group was composed of a broad constituency of Northwest Pasadena residents, as well as District 3 residents, community members, really representing education, design, government, and community affairs, as well as, of course, local residents and organizations. The group also includes members of the original Robinson Park Recreation Center Renovation Project Steering Committee, long name, as well as members of the Robinson family. The stakeholder group met several times throughout 2020 and 2021 to really build a consensus about the values and goals for the project, and this included the development of the vision statement. So the vision statement that they developed sought to emphasize the community's history as well as the legacies of and to be rooted in the stories of Northwest Pasadena, so really providing a dynamic narrative about the community that is reflective of the residents that live here, as well as the history that has occurred in the area. And so based on the work of the stakeholder group, it really became apparent that the project needed to be foregrounded in the area's history, how it's transformed over time, and that the artists who lead the project need to understand their approach as being primarily narrative storytellers, working with a variety of source materials. And so that they also need to include spending time conducting community research and interviews with individuals as well as local groups at the forefront of the project. So a unique aspect of the project, as I mentioned, is really that foregrounding of the artist's research and community engagement before they develop their public art proposal. So this means that the artists selected to the project would need to have the requisite experience, skills, and cultural sensitivity to really be able to work with a diverse community over many, many years and really be able to conduct a lot of historical research and one-on-one interviews. Going back, the selection process was initiated in 2022. The opportunity was open for several weeks, open to California-based artists, and a virtual community meeting and artist workshop was conducted to answer questions from potential applicants and interested community members. The selection process and guideline process is led by the city's Capital Public Art Guidelines, and also included a panel for the selection of the artist, which was composed of a variety of community members, some original members of the stakeholder group, as well as historical experts, local artists, and professional art consultants. And so based on the panel's review of all the applicants, conducting interviews with artists from across California that really specialize in community-driven projects, and they also base their evaluation on the published criteria, and again, really referring back to that vision statement as the guiding force for the project. The panel was delighted to be able to select two artists, Carla J. Harris and Deborah Ashheim. Both artists have extensive public art experience and really create work that is not only site-specific, but reflects unique historical and social contexts of communities. So that's really the bread and butter of their practice, social-based practice, public art, that is reflective of those sort of histories. Both artists are based in Los Angeles County, and Deborah Ashheim happens to be a longtime Northwest Pasadena resident. So just a broad, high-level overview of the development process. As I mentioned, we are currently in phase one, and by having kind of a long timeline, it allows the artists ample time to work with the community and to really develop a robust body of research, and it allows individuals, community members, and groups to have extensive time to contribute and learn from the project as it develops. So just as a quick summary, again, both artists are working independently on their own separate permanent public art projects. It's not clear, and it was not decided at the onset what the artwork will be or what it'll look like, what medium it'll necessarily be, or where it even will be at the recreation center. It was decided that it should likely be inside the Robinson Park Recreation Center, but beyond that, it's up to the artists to develop their concepts and really decide what's most appropriate. And based on their overview and research, the artists have started developing phase one of the project beginning last August. So they have met with many, many community members and groups throughout Northwest Pasadena and District 3 to better understand the area's history and the unique stories from residents. So again, emphasizing narrative storytelling, that's really the basis and kind of the medium of the project. Through events, public meetings, and a lot of one-on-one interviews with residents, the community has been super generous in providing a wealth of information to Deborah and Carla as they develop their projects. And they've really contributed a lot. And from these research, historical materials, and one-on-one interviews, the artists will then develop and base their public art proposal. So just a quick overview of some of the key select members that have been significant on the project. As I mentioned, there have probably been nearly 100 one-on-one interviews that the artists have conducted with individuals as well as local organizations based in Northwest as well as District 3. as well as extensive community meetings at various events. And it's been really exciting to see a lot of the great feedback from the community, especially beginning in 2024 when we were able to share some of the developed images and sketches from the artists. And just a note that if you would like a little bit more information or you'd like to hear from the artist directly, the artists will be presenting to the Arts and Culture Commission next Wednesday on May 8th. So you can hear from them as well. So I'm just going to be spending the rest of the time sharing some images that the artists have generated. Here's a few images from local events. As I mentioned, once we were able to set up a lot of source materials from the artists, we were able to get a lot of good feedback and comments from the public. And I think, it was really important and significant for them to see what images and research were really being generated. As mentioned in the back there, we have a little display. So if you want to look at some of the images more closely, feel free to peruse back there. Joyce, I was able to get a nice photo of Joyce Miles next to her portrait. She was very sweet. As well as Pixie and her mother. Her mother saw a portrait of her and said, "That's my daughter." It was great. And we've also held events at various places, including just last month at Art Center College of Design as well. And then as the artists are developing the project over the past year, a little less than a year, they've included a project blog as well as an Instagram, which we encourage you all to check on regularly if you want to see updates and some of the more specific information in there. Not only can you see the images, but really the descriptions provide a lot of context around the images themselves and a lot of direct quotes from individuals. And again, we are still very much soliciting, looking for contributions from community members, nominations. If there's some individuals that you would recommend the artists reach out to, please let us know. The artists are happy to contribute portraits towards the blog. We have flyers in the back as well if you need to take any materials with you. So please feel free to contribute if you'd like to add anything. So just starting out, I'm going to show a few images. These images are just kind of considered artistic sketches. They're not final artworks. They're just working images primarily based on historical photos as well as personal family photos that individuals have been generous enough to provide the artists. And from those images, the artists create drawings as well as kind of photo collages that commemorate individuals. So some of the more well-known, of course, Octavia Butler, as well as Loretta Thompson-Glickman. Darlene Anderson is a fascinating figure that I didn't know nearly enough about. One of the first professional, if not the first, female African-American roller derby players from back in the day. Chosen as the first pick for the Brooklyn Red Devils. And was named the 1958 Rookie of the Year while skating for the Red Devils. Also featured in Ebony magazine back in 1959. And she talked about in that Ebony article living down the street from Jackie Robinson. Chiquita Waters has been really generous in providing interviews to the artists. She's talked extensively about her experience, particularly in the wake of, or in the aftermath of the Civil Rights Act and the very, I'm sure, well-known by this group, the removing of people and students from different high schools as part of that desegregation process. She talked extensively about how she really wanted to attend John Muir, but was kind of forced to attend Pasadena High School. She also talked extensively about being the first, I believe, African-American voted homecoming queen for Pasadena High School, as well as participating in part in the high school walkouts at the time. And she also was able to get a nice portrait of her with her brother, Victor. And Chiquita is now, Kita maybe is what she goes by, is now a professor at Pacific Oaks College. Brian and Jerry Takeda, Brian Takeda in particular, very well-known figures in the Japanese community, Japanese American community throughout Pasadena, attended John Muir High School. Also founded the very well-known Kansha Pasadena organization, which of course promotes Japanese American culture throughout Pasadena. Photos of him taken as the John Muir High School cheerleaders, volunteering with the Big Brothers program. And as I mentioned, Cancha Pasadena. So part of this is primarily rooted in individuals, right? Individual stories, but there's also relations to organizations, buildings, businesses that influence the community as well. Johnny's Sport Shop, a significant, well-known business in the area, started by Johnny and Itzy Oda, now run by, I believe, Bobby Oda. And then also working from historic images that were taken. So the Perch Derby, organized and sponsored back in the 1960s by Johnny's Sport Shop. And the artists have also gone all the way back to the community development or redevelopment in the wake of World War II. So focusing on Union Church from 1942. Originally, the Union Church was in Kensington Place, just a few doors down from the first AME church. And the photo was taken just a couple of weeks before they were forced to be bussed out to internment camps. And they said the church and the community never really reformed after that, or at least not in the way that it had previously. There were roughly 1,100 Japanese Americans living in Pasadena back in 1942. The Prince family, of course, serving as a significant family from Pasadena, the second African-American family to establish residency in the city, and then going on, of course, to found the first AME church in 1887. Danny Parker, some of you might know Danny Parker. At the first AME church. James Woods Mortuary as well, established in 1928 by James and Annie Mae Woods, originally located on Vernon Street and then later renamed now to Woods Valentine Mortuary, now located on Fair Oaks, and serves as one of the oldest Black-owned businesses in Pasadena. And then also looking at, the artists have developed content around what the current state and structure of Northwest Pasadena is. So they're going to be working with, and they've worked extensively with the Kennedy family in recognition of the just last year dedicated John J. Kennedy pool at the Recreation Center. And the artists are also working directly with the Robinson family, developing images, sketches, as well as contacting both sides, both Mac and Jackie's side of the family. John Muir High School, of course, notable residents that came through over the years. Ruby McKnight Williams, significant member of the NAACP, president throughout the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, and the influence that she's had on the community. Dennis Hayward has also been a really important source for content from the artists. Dennis Hayward, filmmaker and editor-in-chief at the Pasadena Black Pages. And also provided a lot of background and content on Cinema 21 when it was initially developed as the go-to place in the community. And then later in the 70s, shifting a bit to primarily focus on Spanish language features, which was a new focus for Pasadena at the time, since many residents were Spanish speakers. Rene Gonzalez, the artist, just posted a bit about Rene Gonzalez as well, who is current, I believe, current Human Relations Commissioner at the city and has focused a lot on and talked a lot about the redlining of Pasadena back in the 50s, as well as education reforms in the area. And so part of the focus is not just on historical images or historical individuals, but also what are the current residents, who they are, what their lives are like. So Carla has focused primarily on what she's kind of calling these community portraits. Ahmad Andrews, long time coach for the Pop Warner football program, youth program, over in Robinson Park for many years. Oh, there's Joyce Miles, as I mentioned, longtime resident, attended John Muir, talked extensively about how much she enjoyed the band and being on the drum corps. And as I mentioned, I was able to get that nice photo of her at the Black History Festival the other month. Beverly Bogar was generous enough to spend time with the artists. And it's really, you know, we understand it's a lot to ask from individuals to provide what can be like vulnerable personal photographs and materials. So we hope, we appreciate that so many people have been generous in that way and have let the artists in, as well as documenting Father Beverly Bogart, Leroy Bogart. So as you can see, there's a broad array of individuals, groups. Some of them are drawings, some of these are generated as photo collages. These are all just kind of considered portraits that the artists generate, sketches that the artists generate. They're not necessarily going to live as the permanent public artwork at the site, but they will exist as a long digital or printed program as part of the project. The artists are considering not only, okay, what is the physical artwork gonna be, but what is the long life of the project? How can all of these materials and this research that they generate be made available? Adrienne Devine, local artist, cousin of the Robinson family. And so again, that's what I showed this evening is just a small sample of the work that the artists have generated. We'll be sharing more over time. I didn't want to take up too much time this evening, but if there are groups, individuals that you would like us to contact or you would like to nominate, sometimes it's very flattering for people if they find out that they've been nominated for a project. That can kind of incentivize them a little bit to participate. Please feel free to reach out to the artists directly through the Gmail account. Again, as I mentioned, the blog as well as the Instagram. And of course, you can contact Cultural Affairs directly as well. If you need to email us, we are arts@cityofpasadena.net, and our Cultural Affairs website is just cityofpasadena.net/arts. And without further ado, thank you very much for having the presentation.
Are there any questions for Corey? Can you come to the mic, please?
Are you taking nominations of current people?
Yeah, of course.
Like young people?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And the artists are also looking for a range of generational, so they're going to be doing work with seniors at the senior center, possibly holding future events. We're also working with PUSD to engage the younger students as well. They also have asked for a few more nominations of sports figures, athletes. We of course know the very well-known athletes in the area, but they're also looking for maybe individuals that are lesser well-known, that are just significant members in the community that you'd like to nominate as well.
Who can they reach out to?
They can reach out to me. They can pick up one of our flyers in the back if you'd like to contact the artists directly. Any method's useful. Yeah.
You had a question? You?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I was born here, but
Oh.
I'm enjoying this, yeah.
Oh, good.
I remember so many people.
Question? Come on to the mic. Come on to the mic.
Are the artists collaborating on the two pieces, or are they going to do two separate ones, one each?
Good question. They will be two separate projects. We're kind of calling them tandem projects, but in this first phase, since they're really just doing research and contacting individuals, they're really collaborating and working in tandem because it makes sense for them to share research. But they will be two separate proposals that they develop. at different locations within the facility. But of course, the idea being that their two projects will kind of complement each other. They'll sort of share content. We don't necessarily want them to be too repetitive or duplicative in terms of the content that they're working with, but they're both working collaboratively, but will be presenting and reviewed as separate projects.
You have musicians as well that you're doing. I want to make sure they remember Bobby Hutchison, and he was on the same block as Darlene, Mac, and a few others. We're all on McDonald Street. And
that would be good.
And the other one I was going to make a mention, for that community that was removed on the south side of Colorado, the elementary school was, of course, was Garfield. And everybody went to Garfield Elementary, and they took out a lot of the churches. And I don't know whether or not you can reconstruct anything to talk about. Actually, Dayton was the heart of the community. That's where all the clubs were on Dayton Street. And so those are just a couple of things that I just thought while sitting here came to my mind. Thank you.
Great, yeah. Thank you. That would be great. Yeah, I don't know that we have a lot of musician representation as well, so that would be good to incorporate.
Any other questions? Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Okay, so up next, last but certainly not least, we have our Design and Historic Preservation Section Principal Planner, Kevin Johnson, who will discuss the Historic Places Pasadena project.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's a really great turnout. I appreciate you focusing your attention on our presentations. The first two projects that you heard about tonight are very specific locations in Pasadena, the 710 and Northwest Pasadena. The project that I'm going to talk about is a citywide effort to record historic resources in Pasadena. So thank you for inviting us to come and speak about the project. So as many of you probably know, historic preservation is a guiding principle of the city's planning policy. The city has strong protections for historic resources, whether or not they are officially designated by the City Council. And we do have many examples of historic resources in Pasadena, and you can see some of those here on the slide. We have historic districts or neighborhoods. We have historic bridges, commercial buildings, and we even have landmark trees in the city. So we have a very wide variety of historic resources. One of the challenges we face is that we don't have a comprehensive citywide inventory of historic resources. So we don't necessarily know what all of the properties are in Pasadena that have historical significance. And that can be a problem when people want to make changes to buildings or want to demolish buildings. We might end up losing a historic resource that's important to the community. So that's one of the reasons why this effort is important. Another issue that we have with our program is that most of the historic resources that are designated because of their architecture and how they look. And there are many other reasons why properties might be historically significant. These are a few examples of properties that are designated historic resources in the city for reasons other than architecture. They could be the location of a historical event. It could represent a type of a development trend. It could represent social, cultural, or civil rights history. Or it could have a connection to a historically significant person during the productive years of their life. And as I mentioned, that we have very few historic resources designated for these reasons. So because we don't know the full extent of potential historic resources in the city that deserve protection, the City Council directed the Planning Department to conduct a citywide historic resources survey, which is this project, and it's called Historic Places Pasadena, Completing Our Story. And the intent of the project is to tell a more complete story of Pasadena's history, going beyond architecture to discover all of the other important cultural aspects of the city and what properties are connected to those important aspects of our history. So we now have a team of historians and architectural historians that are researching and writing a narrative history of the development of Pasadena. And this will extend from the time of the Native Americans that lived here originally up through about 1979. So it's a very wide span of time that we'll be covering in this document. And it will describe the development trends and events, people and stories of the communities that make up our diverse city. And it will also outline the types of properties that can be considered historically significant. So that's the first phase of the project that's underway right now. The second phase of the project will be a field survey that will be conducted street by street. Our researchers will drive every street in the city, and they will take the information they learned in the first phase and try to identify the properties that actually represent those different historic contexts that they find in their research, and identify properties that may be historically significant and worthy of protection. And so the final product will be a narrative history of the development of the city that everyone will be able to access and understand from the city's website, as well as a database of potentially eligible, historically significant properties that could become designated historic resources in the city and protected for future generations. So there are many benefits to this project. Primarily, it'll raise awareness of the city's development and all of the different events and important things that happened over the course of the city, the city's development. It'll identify important people who lived and worked in the city and the important things that they did. And it'll ensure that everybody will be able to see their history reflected in the city's official historical record. It'll also create a more complete inventory of potentially historic properties to facilitate better planning throughout the city. And it'll streamline approval processes for people wanting to make changes to buildings or demolish buildings, because right now we have to evaluate every building that's over 45 years of age to determine if it's historic before somebody can move forward with making changes. So this project will help to streamline that, because we'll identify those in as many as possible in this project. So one of the very important aspects of this project is community outreach, which is why we're here tonight, and why we're sharing all of these projects together, because they all involve input from the community that we really need to understand what properties, what people, what events, what stories are important to the community. We want to reach as many people as we can and attend as many events as possible so that we can hear from people about what's important to them. We have a website that you can go to, cityofpasadena.net/historic places. We also have a flyer on the table in the back that you can take home with you. It has a QR code on it that'll send you directly to that website. We also have a sign-up sheet if you want to to remain informed about the project. We'll be sending out regular emails to let you know about events and things that are happening with the project. But one of the interesting things that we have on our website is what's called a story map. And in this, which this is what it looks like currently, you can actually go into our website and put a place on the map that's important to you, that you think has historical significance, that you want to make sure that we consider as part of our project. And it's a very simple form. There's really only 3 fields that are required. We just ask you to tell us the name of the person, place, or story, or event, or whatever it is. The type of information that's provided, whether it's about a building, or an event, or a person, and the reason why it's important to you. There's some other fields that you can complete, as well as a map that you can use to pinpoint the location. You can also add a photograph if you'd like. And also, when you go to that map, you can actually click on each of these little locations, each of these pins on the map, and see what the members of the community who provided this information have said about it. So you can learn about these different places in the city and understand a little bit about why they're important to certain members of the community. So all of the information that we gather through these channels will inform the written history of the project and the citywide survey, and will contribute to a richer, more inclusive narrative that completes the story of Pasadena's history. So thank you so much for your attention to the presentation. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Again, we have the flyers on the back table, which has my contact information on it. And please go to our website. And if you know of any events that are coming up, or you're a member of a group that you think would be interested in hearing about this project, please let me know. We want to talk to as many people as possible about this project and hear from you about what's important. So thank you very much. Are there any questions that anybody has about the project? Yes.
Are you working with groups like Pasadena Heritage and the Pasadena Historical Museum and others to help populate that map?
Yes, definitely. Pasadena Heritage has contributed to the map. We actually just last week had an event at their offices, and so we've been definitely engaged with Pasadena Heritage, and the Historic Museum is a wealth of information. They have a wonderful collection of information, and we've definitely been engaged with them. So yeah, thank you for that suggestion.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, that will conclude our meeting, but I'll open the floor up for any questions you have for me or any other city staff that you have. Happy to answer or help. Go ahead.
I just have two questions related to utilities. One is on the rate increases. A lot of homeowners have been asked by Pasadena to add solar, to add gray water systems, to get rid of lawns, to take advantage of the Be Waterwise program. And I know myself, we've invested over $40,000 in these systems, thinking in the long term it will pay off. But if the rate increases just across the board, then all that investment will kind of go to waste. So I'm hoping that when they're considering the rate increases, they'll consider that the biggest users and abusers of water and trash and electricity get the larger rate increases, and those who've been doing what the Pasadena city's asked us to do and put in those things that save water, save trash, composting's another thing, that they would be proportionally less affected by the rate increase than those
You're saying
who use
those
a
who
lot.
have conserved more should have an incentive to conserve more.
Yeah, because then you're incentivizing like all those who've added a lot of cost to our own bills to do the right thing for the environment and for the city and for ourselves in the long term, but there's a lot of initial costs. So the rate increase could really kind of disincentivize more people to do that if it's across the board. The other thing I want to say, and you and I have discussed this, and it'll give you an opportunity to kind of tell everybody where we're at with it, is we're still in Northwest Pasadena the victim of redlining when it comes to digital redlining, which is that we have no fiber in this area of the city, and cities across America that were traditionally redlined still have no fiber, where our neighbors have lots of options that they're paying $45 for internet, and we're paying $90, at least I am, for Spectrum. And it's not just digital redlining, but it adds to the digital divide, where our kids and people's grandkids are not growing up with the same parity in terms of what they can learn at home, and especially after COVID, that's really important that you don't have digital at home. So what's going on in terms of adding fiber to the neighborhood?
There is a master plan that's looking at that. I think we allocated some additional funds in the CIP for that. We do have additional funds that was allocated to make Wi-Fi in our parks. So now you can go, I think we're completing the remainder, maybe the last 4 or 15, so 15, I was off by 10. But so we do have that project that was allocated in our CIP. So we have the master plan and the Wi-Fi in the parks. The master plan should be completed this year, and then from there we can start to roll out the projects, hopefully, and getting more funds in the CIP going forward. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I did just want to make one comment on the rates. Unfortunately, the state law does not allow us to charge different amounts to people based on your usage. So I know you indicated you made a big investment so that you could conserve and use less power, for example. I think the payoff comes in you not using as much, and therefore your payment is lower. But we cannot charge different parcels different amounts. It's called, there was a law called Proposition 218 that prevents us from doing that. And so that's kind of the conundrum that the city is in. By state law, we have to charge it. Your fee has to be proportionate to what the parcel is, and we can't charge different amounts to different classes of people.
You know, honestly, I saw a big drop in my water usage when I got rid of my lawn, but after I installed solar, I've seen almost no change in my electric bill like I should have. I'm not sure why.
I would encourage you to contact the Water and Power Department. I'm not an expert in that area, but there may be something with the meter that needs fixing. I don't know, but definitely you should look into that.
You can send us an email and then we'll help make that connection. Any other questions? Well, thank you for coming out and oh, thank you for the clap. And just a point of order, didn't Beverly Bogart look good in that picture? Thank you.